The Galactic Council's emergency session had been called to order for the third time in as many cycles. Admiral Zexathera of the Colonian Empire adjusted her bioluminescent crest as she addressed the assembled representatives from across known space. "The human question has been settled," she announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had witnessed the fall of a dozen species. "Our combined fleets reported total victory at the Battle of Sol Prime. No survivors. No escape. Pod saw no quantum signatures fleeing into dark space." A satisfied murmur rippled through the council chambers. The Vrex delegate clicked his mandibles in approval, while the ethereal Luminari representative pulsed a soft blue, their equivalent of a smile. For 27 standard years, humanity had been a thorn in their collective side, refusing to bow to the established order, declining their generous offers of subjugation and, worst of all, winning battles they had no business winning. The human fleet's unconventional tactics were troublesome, admitted General Korthak of the hegemony, his forearms gesturing dismissively. But crude innovation only carries a species so far. They simply lacked the numbers and the technology to compete with our unified armadas. What none of them knew was that Captain Sarah Chen was floating in the debris field of her destroyed dreadnought, her emergency beacon dark, listening to every word through intercepted communications. Her ship, the Defiance, had been one of 12 vessels that had engaged the alien coalition and lost spectacularly. But losing had been the point. Chen smiled grimly as she watched the enemy fleets dispersing, their commanders confident in their victory. They had detected the human fleet's quantum drives powering down, witnessed the spectacular explosions, cataloged the debris. They had done everything right according to their extensive battle protocols. Everything except understand what humans meant by tactical withdrawal. 3 weeks later, Admiral Zexathera was reviewing resource allocation reports when her communications officer, a nervous Colonian named Vex, approached her command platform. "Admiral, we're receiving unusual readings from the Outer Rim territories," Vex reported, his scales shifting to an anxious purple. "Deep space monitoring stations are detecting gravitational anomalies." "Elaborate," Zexathera commanded, not looking up from her tactical displays. "The anomalies suggest massive objects moving at significant fractions of light speed, but—" Vex hesitated. "But they're not showing up on our conventional sensors. Only gravitational detectors and quantum resonance scanners are picking them up." Zexathera's crest flickered with interest. "Rogue asteroids? Dark matter formations?" "Unknown, Admiral. The patterns are too regular, too coordinated." Across the galaxy, similar reports were flooding in. The Vrex detected gravitational ripples near their industrial worlds. The Luminari observed strange quantum fluctuations in previously empty space. The hegemony's deep space listening posts registered sounds that defied classification. A low, resonant thrumming that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. It was the Colonian scientist Dr. Thex who first made the connection. He had been studying the quantum signatures left behind by human technology, trying to understand how such a primitive species had managed to be so troublesome. What he discovered made his blood run cold. "Admiral," he reported during an emergency briefing, his voice barely above a whisper, "the humans weren't using conventional cloaking technology. They were using something far more sophisticated. Quantum phase manipulation. They can shift their ships slightly out of our dimensional plane." Zexathera's crest flared bright red. "You're suggesting their entire fleet survived?" "Not just survived," Thex continued, his scales now a sickly yellow. "I believe they've been building. The gravitational signatures suggest vessels far larger than anything we encountered before. And the quantum resonance patterns—" He paused, checking his readings again. "They're consistent with thousands of ships, not hundreds." The thrumming sound grew louder over the following days. Colonian children began having nightmares about thunder in space. Vrex workers in the outer colonies reported seeing shadows, moving between the stars. The Luminaries' normally serene collective consciousness became agitated, sensing something vast and patient approaching. Captain Chen, now aboard the massive dreadnought Resurrection, stood on the bridge watching the enemy worlds grow larger on her displays. Around her, the human fleet stretched across space like a steel constellation. They had used the past 2 decades well, not just hiding and rebuilding, but evolving. "All ships report ready, Captain," her tactical officer announced. "Quantum phase generators? All vessels confirm full-dimensional synchronization. We can decloak the entire fleet simultaneously." Chen nodded. They had learned much from their defeat at Sol Prime. While the aliens celebrated their victory, humanity had been busy turning loss into opportunity. Every destroyed ship had been a lesson in alien technology. Every casualty had been analyzed and avenged through better designs. "Open a channel to the Galactic Council," Chen ordered. Moments later, Admiral Zexathera received a transmission that made her worst nightmares seem optimistic. "Greetings," came a distinctly human voice, calm and professional. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the human colonial fleet. You may remember us. You declared us extinct." On screens across the galaxy, the human fleet materialized. Not dozens of ships, but thousands. Massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything in the alien arsenals. Sleek destroyers that moved like living things. Carriers that could blot out stars. "We want to thank you," Chen continued, her voice carrying across the void to every alien world simultaneously. "Your victory at Sol Prime taught us valuable lessons about underestimating one's enemies. We've spent the last 2 decades making sure we never make that mistake again." The thrumming sound intensified, and now they could identify it. The harmonic resonance of thousands of human quantum drives operating in perfect synchronization. "We're not here for conquest," Chen announced, even as her weapons systems powered up in full view of enemy sensors. "We're here for a conversation about the future of this galaxy, a conversation between equals." Admiral Zexathara looked at her tactical displays and realized with crystalline clarity that the balance of power hadn't just shifted, it had been completely rewritten. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath as humanity announced its return to the galactic stage. They had been presumed extinct, written off as another failed species unable to adapt to the realities of cosmic politics. They had been wrong about humanity before. They would not make that mistake again.